What if the point of no return is already passed, and all that stands between us and oblivion hinges on a single, fragile moment? We inhabit a world where every sunrise appears routine, dawn breaking over sprawling metropolises, deal-making in gleaming skyscrapers, jetliners tracing contrails across the morning sky. Yet behind those glossy facades lies a chilling truth. A mountain-sized asteroid hurtles inexorably toward Earth, and time melts away like ice in a furnace. At the intersection of human ingenuity and the greed of shadowy elites, one man emerges, without fanfare, without cinematic flair or special effects. Keanu Reeves walks calmly toward the launch pad, and in his eyes we see not the glare of spotlights, but the future of all humankind. He is driven not by the roar of a crowd or the blinking lights of high-security chambers, but by a quiet conviction in unity and the power of a single, deliberate act. Behind the scenes, a conspiracy unfolds. Corporations and hidden political players plot sabotage, weaving webs of deceit to profit from the fear that looms larger than the asteroid itself. Yet at the critical instant when schemes shatter and the armor of prejudice cracks, it is the hero's silence that resonates louder than any declaration. His serene gaze lays bare the true face of power, and his unwavering resolve dismantles the barriers of international intrigue. You will witness more than a rocket launch or a fleeting burst of hope. You will see how one man's step becomes the spark that ignites global solidarity, how trembling handshakes replace cold protocols, and how fear yields to the realization of our collective strength. Stay with us until the very end, to watch how this fragile now transforms into the firm promise of our tomorrow, and to understand why one individual can ignite the dawn of a new era for all humanity. The city hums with its familiar rhythms, traffic crawling along asphalt arteries, neon storefronts flickering to life as the sun dips below distant skyscrapers, the measured clack of high heels on polished sidewalks melding with the drone of delivery drones overhead. Corporate towers glow from within, each window a tiny portal into evening meetings and whispered phone calls. Cafes spill steam from freshly brewed espresso machines, and bicyclists weave through the streets, their tires whispering on painted lanes. Office workers materialize in revolving doors, iPhones in hand, faces lit by the cold glow of screens as they coordinate the next day's deadlines. On the open terraces of glass-walled penthouses, the city's elite sip craft cocktails against panoramic backdrops, their laughter rising above the low roar of urban life. Above it all, in the boundless vault of the sky, commercial airliners carve white contrails like fleeting brushstrokes across a canvas stained by the late afternoon haze. Somewhere between the stratosphere and the bustle below, a private jet banks eastward, its passengers oblivious to the fact that the world they leave behind teeters on the brink of an event so vast that it could eclipse the very definition of human history. In the halls of the United Nations headquarters, far from the glare of public screens, a silent alarm has sounded. Security clearances ratcheted upward, corridors cleared of foot traffic, and dozens of scientists from every continent assemble in a conference room whose glass walls offer a panoramic view of the Potomac River winding past monuments and museum domes. The air is heavy with tension, the relentless tick of a polished clock on the wall sounding like a countdown. Across the table, experts in astrophysics, orbital mechanics, and advanced weaponry share headlines of an approaching celestial behemoth. Radar scans show the object growing in size with every passing hour, its trajectory confirmed by calculations so precise that denial is impossible. It is a mountain cast into the void, its mass measured in billions of tons, hurtling toward Earth at velocities that defy imagination. Gravity pulls it inexorably, like a dark leviathan drawn to the planet's embrace. In whispered exchanges, team leaders outline proposals. A nuclear strike delivered by modified ICBMs stationed around the Pacific Rim, a gravitational tractor built from magnetized satellites to nudge the rock off course. a revolutionary phase array laser array linked to space-based mirrors to sear a channel through its surface, deflecting it ever so slightly. Each solution carries risks that ripple through geopolitical fault lines. World leaders weigh in from distant capitals, an insistence on the nuclear option by some, tempered by fears of fallout and seismic repercussions. Calls for collaboration on high-energy physics experiments from others, tempered by the bitter memory of past scientific rivalries. The concept of a global task force moves from abstract ideal to urgent necessity, even as national interests threaten to derail unified action. Military advisors present scale models of launch platforms beneath ocean waves, while environmental experts map the fallout zones of errant debris. Economists calculate the staggering costs in trillions of dollars, funds that would otherwise rebuild economies and end poverty. Yet the machinery of bureaucracy lumbers forward, committees and subcommittees forming at every level, each seeking to refine the plan, but losing precious hours in endless revision. Beyond the UN chamber's glass walls, time seems to slow. The Potomac's currents swirl in eddies, oblivious to the storm brewing in minds and keyboards. A construction crane overhead moves with languid precision against silken skies, and the distant sound of a trumpet echoes from a street musician, notes drifting through the marble plaza like a haunting folk song. In the laboratories of Geneva and Tokyo, sensors ping with new data that quantifies the asteroid's composition. Traces of nickel, cobalt, and silicate rock suggesting both extreme hardness and brittle fractures. The discovery of porous pockets within its structure fuels fresh hope. If a precise strike can exploit these weaknesses, the asteroid might shatter rather than simply reroute. Back in New York, financial markets flicker on electronic boards as analysts project the economic fallout of potential impact zones spanning continents. Still, Ground Zero sits in the realm of possibilities. A barren desert, a populous coastline, a network of islands, each scenario demanding different evacuation maps. Satellite feeds show an apocalyptic shadow approaching the curvature of Earth, an image shared in private military channels and dark web forums alike. As twilight deepens, the UN group adjourns for the night, leaving plans sketched on white boards, equations scrawled in digital tablets margins, and the uneasy certainty that the moment of decision approaches faster than any clock could measure. Outside, security guards replace the day's diplomatic staff, the empty streets bearing witness to a world unaware that it balances on a knife's edge. Behind closed doors, one name surfaces repeatedly on classified briefings: Keanu Reeves. Not merely the actor celebrated for his roles on silver screens, but a philanthropist and discreet ambassador for global unity, whose discreet contributions to causes from child education to disaster relief have earned him undue respect among select inner circles. A confidential communique describes him as the ideal figure to bridge the gulf between military necessity and humanitarian values, a man whose calm presence can unify entrenched camps. As midnight approaches, an encrypted channel hums to life, carrying the invitation that will summon Reeves into the heart of the crisis. In that instant, the hum above the abyss shifts tone, no longer the familiar city murmur, but the deep, resonant echo of a world listening for its salvation. Keanu Reeves, whose name had long been synonymous with quiet compassion and discreet philanthropy, found himself summoned into a world far removed from film sets and charity galas. In a secure briefing room deep within a fortified compound, he reviewed a dossier stamped with the designation Top Secret and a cryptic title, Operation Survival X. The documents detailed the impending approach of an asteroid on a collision course with Earth and the nascent international coalition that had formed to avert disaster. Rift lines between nations blinked on digital maps, but beneath the surface lay a shared imperative: to unite the world's top minds and resources in a race against time. Reeves, known for his humanitarian missions in war zones and disaster areas, was offered the role of field commander, a liaison whose reputation could bridge the gaps of suspicion that threatened to stall unified action. In the hushed glow of overhead panels, Reeves studied models of the asteroid's trajectory. He absorbed calculations from orbital physicists in Moscow, designers of nuclear deflection strategies in Beijing, and specialists in kinetic impactors from European research centers. Each proposal carried its own promise and peril. A nuclear strike risked radioactive fallout. A gravity tractor required painstaking precision over months, and a laser array demanded coordination of satellite constellations never before flown in formation. Yet the most daunting barrier was not technical, but political. Tensions simmered beneath every handshake and protocol. Reeves would need to cultivate trust among scientists whose governments had long eyed each other with suspicion. Within days, a multinational command center took shape in a converted NATO facility, its walls lined with screens fed by telescopes, radar arrays, and supercomputers. Reeves walked the corridors in unassuming attire, jeans and a dark sweater. His presence marked not by military regalia, but by the steady calm that had accompanied each of his past interventions in crises around the globe. He paused at clusters of engineers from the United States, strode through groups of physicists from Russia, offered ready nods to their Chinese counterparts, and respectful bows to European naval officers. His reputation preceded him. Tales of his hands-on work delivering aid in remote regions. Personal debts repaid to single mothers in Sarajevo, funds anonymously donated to rebuild schools in earthquake zones. In that moment, Reeves's humanity became the most powerful currency in the room. While the technical teams ran simulations and refined deflection algorithms, Reeves met with Lieutenant General Ramirez, head of the joint military program responsible for launch logistics. The general, accustomed to curt orders and rigid chains of command, found himself speaking in measured tones as Reeves outlined the need for seamless cooperation. No national insignia could overshadow the stakes, a world of cities, farmland, and ecosystems on the brink of annihilation. The journalist leaks might have branded it a Hollywood stunt, but the general recognized that Reeves's involvement changed the calculus. Where once there had been requests for bilateral agreements, now there was an unspoken understanding. Failure was not an option. At a makeshift planning table illuminated by a single lamp, Reeves traced finger paths across a globe etched with colored pins. He pointed to the Pacific launch platform, the remote Joint U.S. Russian fueling station in Kazakhstan, the European control hub near Toulouse, and the Chinese tracking array in Sichuan. His gestures were fluid and unhurried, each movement conveying respect for the expertise at every station. Maps and graphs circled in holographic displays, but Reeves's focus remained tethered to the human element. The hands that would guide rockets, the eyes that would monitor telemetry, the voices that would confirm every stage separation. He insisted on regular live video briefings in multiple languages to ensure transparency and build camaraderie across thousands of miles. Night after night, Reeves lingered in the war room environment long after ministers and generals had departed. He reviewed status reports, checked in with scientists designing thermal shielding, and offered quiet encouragement to technicians debugging launch software. When disagreements flared over protocol hierarchies or intellectual property rights, he intervened not with authority but with empathy, reminding each participant of a shared purpose. His calm presence dissolved barriers. A Russian engineer praised an American technician's solution for stabilizing the launch platform. A Chinese physicist and a French orbital analyst drafted joint proposals for mid-course corrections. In the silent solidarity of those long hours, Reeves had welded a fractured alliance into a cohesive front. As the countdown toward the first test launch approached, military personnel who had once eyed Reeves skeptically now deferred to his judgment on matters of crew accommodations and risk assessments. Scientists who had guarded their research in national silos now exchanged simulation data over secure networks without hesitation. Even the most hardened political operatives recognized that Reeves's leadership had transformed a disparate assembly into a single organism with a unified heartbeat of survival. Each morning's briefing opened not with rigid salutes, but with a moment of silent reflection, a collective acknowledgement of the enormity of what they faced. Outside the compound's reinforced walls, The ordinary world marched on. City streets filled with commuters, children laughing on playgrounds, flights landing and departing from international airports. Few grasped the quiet revolution unfolding behind the closed doors. Yet every action taken within those corridors set the stage for the next phase of Operation Survival X. Reeves, once an emissary of goodwill in the realm of cinema and charity, now stood at the nexus of a mission that would test the limits of human ingenuity and unity. In the stillness before the storm of rocket engines and orbital maneuvers, the silent solidarity he fostered held the fragile promise that, together, humanity might yet steer its destiny away from the abyss. An uneasy tension shadowed the command center as teams worked around the clock to prepare the rocket and its support systems for launch. Banks of monitors displayed live telemetry, engine temperature charts, and countdown clocks synchronized across multiple time zones. Technicians in headsets exchanged terse updates while securing data links between the Pacific launch platform and the orbital tracking station over the Atlantic. Satellite dishes on the roof swiveled imperiously, feeding streams of information into the nerve center's humming servers. Outside, the desert sands of the test range lay silent beneath the moonlight, the launch pad a lone beacon of preparedness against the void. Yet beneath the surface of this orchestrated effort, currents of conspiracy rippled through the shadows of power. In high-rise boardrooms far from the desert's isolation, executives of major defense contractors met behind closed doors. Their faces glowed in the cool light of polished mahogany tables as they weighed profit projections against the ethics of planetary salvation. Superficial nods gave way to veiled threats. If the project succeeded, billions would flow into government coffers. But who would control the follow-on contracts for cleanup, reconstruction, and global security? A more insidious question emerged. Could engineered delays inflate the value of emergency response funds and shift the balance of political influence? Meanwhile, in underground corridors within ministerial offices, key political figures whispered about leverage and advantage. A consortium of energy barons argued that the asteroid's deflection would disrupt plans to absorb revenue from emergency fossil fuel extraction in predicted impact zones. Military-industrial lobbyists maneuvered to insert proprietary technology into critical systems, despite clear evidence from independent reviewers that the chosen software modules pose security vulnerabilities. A single compromised line of code might send the rocket off course and splinter the asteroid into multiple fragments, each raining down debris across rival territories. For those with the power and the motive, the risk of global cataclysm was a calculated gamble against the prospect of astronomical profits and enduring geopolitical dominance. Back at the Joint Operations Hub, faint anomalies began to surface. Simulated launch rehearsals flagged missing authorization keys in the flight control software. What should have been an automated routine sequence refused to proceed beyond the initial ignition checkpoints. Engineers raced to trace the missing segments of code, only to find that entire modules had been quietly overwritten, their checksum logs altered to mimic legitimate updates. The discovery rippled through the lab. This was no random glitch, but a deliberate act of sabotage. An emergency task force was assembled, its members spanning government agencies and academic institutions, all charged with rooting out the mole or external intrusion. The next blow came when the high-altitude research aircraft, rigged with specialized sensors and configured as a mobile command post, experienced a catastrophic hydraulic failure. Alarms blared as the plane banked sharply over the Pacific, its automated systems struggling to maintain altitude and telemetry. Pilots fought to stabilize the craft, but mission-critical instruments flickered offline. Ground crews watched in horror as smoke trailed from a wing pod, the jet's irreplaceable payload of sensor arrays imperiled by a mechanical fault that should have been caught in routine maintenance. Investigators discovered that the safety overrides had been intentionally disabled, their circuit boards rewired to mimic benign wear and tear. The sabotage extended beyond software. It struck at the very hardware that embodied the mission's lifeline. In the war room, Reeves paced between clusters of bewildered scientists, his dark jacket catching the pale glow of screens. There was no time for recriminations. Every moment counted. He marshaled expert teams to perform cold patch code injections, isolating the corrupted segments and restoring defensive firewalls around the core control systems. Simultaneously, mechanical engineers devised in-flight contingency protocols for the aircraft, retrofitting backup actuators into hastily shipped replacement parts. Reeves's calm decisiveness steadied the room, but the specter of treachery hung heavy in the air. Who within this vast network of allies had turned traitor? And to what end? At headquarters in Geneva, cryptographers combed through encrypted communications channels. Their analysis revealed a pattern of clandestine data transfers timed to key project milestones. IP addresses masked by offshore proxies pointed toward shell companies with ties to major energy conglomerates. In Washington, a classified briefing confirmed that several high-ranking officials had taken undisclosed meetings with corporate lobbyists in the weeks leading up to the sabotage. It was no longer a race only against the asteroid's arrival, but also against the unraveling trust that held the coalition together. Reeves convened an emergency council via secure video link. Stakeholders from every participating nation had to commit to strengthened oversight and mutual transparency. He outlined the evidence of deliberate foul play, urging each representative to choose between profiteering from despair and preserving the collective future of humanity. The mood shifted as ministers and CEOs, confronted with irrefutable proof of betrayal, backed the operation's integrity. New protocols were enacted: dual control authorization for flight-critical commands, real-time audit trails for every software update, and a task force to vet personnel with accelerated security clearances. In the following hours, the joint team orchestrated a controlled rehearsal of the modified launch sequence. Codes were verified by cross-national teams simultaneously. The aircraft underwent expedited safety certification. As dawn broke over the world, the desert launch pad awakened once more, a tableau of readiness against the yawning threat overhead. The conspiracy from the heights had been exposed and contained, but its memory lingered as a stark reminder. Even as humanity confronted an external peril, the internal battle to uphold integrity and unity could prove equally vital. With sabotage thwarted, the mission now stood on firmer ground, its success depending not only on advanced technology, but on the unbreakable solidarity forged through the crucible of shared adversity. The desert night air thrums with latent power as the launch pad stands ready beneath a vault of stars. Floodlights cast stark relief across the gleaming tower, revealing every rivet, every panel buttress for a mission that could determine humanity's fate. A low hum of generators echoes through the compound, underscored by the distant pulse of diesel engines powering hydraulics that will steady the rocket's base. Technicians clad in insulated coveralls flit between consoles and access hatches, guided by the glow of their helmet lamps. Overhead, the Orion-class booster looms like a metal colossus, its sleek contours designed to cleave through Earth's atmosphere and divert a celestial mountain of rock. Inside the mobile command van, rows of monitors flicker with cascading data. Pressure curves, temperature gradients, propellant flow rates, gyroscopic alignment checks, and the ever-advancing countdown clock. The digits dance across screens in relentless precision, each change a heartbeat in the mission's final moments. Around the central terminal, engineers and flight directors exchange nods, their eyes trained on gauges that refuse to lie. The acrid aroma of spent fuel mingles with the crisp chill that descends as midnight veils the sky. A hush falls over the room. Not the absence of sound, but the focused quiet of souls absorbed by the stakes at hand. Back on the pad, spotters stand poised with binoculars, tracking the laser-guided alignment beams that ensure the rocket's trajectory will match the computed intercept vector. A single misalignment of milliradians could send the vehicle off course, leaving the asteroid untouched or shattering it into dangerous fragments. Ground-to-air radio channels whisper with static as remote sensors transmit last-second readings. A technician slides her finger along a capacitive display, verifying the integrity of the high-energy capacitor banks designed to power the gravity tractor thrusters. Another toggles a secure switch, confirming that the nuclear contingency protocol's failsafe remains in standby. At T20 minutes, the command van dims its interior lights, and the final pre-launch checklist begins in unison. One by one, subsystems declare go. Avionics, guidance, telemetry, environmental controls, flight termination system, and propulsion ignition sequencing. An orange glow spills from the vehicles aft as the core stage engines ignite briefly for spooling. The ground rumbles in anticipation, and every soul within earshot feels the resonance through their bones. At T5 minutes, an automated voice issues the last directive: initiate terminal countdown. Monitors switch to split-screen mode, panning live feeds from multiple vantage points: pad cam, tracking radar, spectrometer array, and the international control room feed. Static lines confirm encrypted channels to the Chinese observatory network and the European telemetry relay. Every mission partner watches, united by the weight of the moment. At T2 minutes, a sudden warning flares on the primary console: auto throttle fail. A swarm of red icons floods the screen as the thrust vector control subsystem refuses to respond to digital commands. Ripples of concern pass through the team. A backup algorithm attempts a reboot, but the override fails to establish secure handshake protocols. The room's temperature seems to drop as the realization takes hold. Without manual intervention, the vehicle will ignite unevenly, risking catastrophic structural failure or an uncontrolled spin. In that charged stillness, Keanu Reeves steps away from the projection of global command and the throng of analysts. His approach is calm, practiced, an embodiment of the quiet resolve that earned him this role. At the manual override console, his fingers dance across unlabeled switches and rotary dials, each designed for emergency direct input. He flicks the master safety key into the manual position, locking out the compromised autopilot and activating the redundant flight control bus. A prompt appears: manual throttle control engaged. The red icons blink once, then vanish. Under Reeves's steady hand, the analog gauge from main stage thrust climbs from 0 toward the required ignition threshold. The tactile feedback of the control yoke and the satisfying click of mechanical relays reassure onlookers more than any digital readout could. His brow remains unfurrowed, his breathing even, as he adjusts the throttle lever to 20%, enough to sustain spool without exceeding the vehicle's thermal margins. In a precise choreography of movement, he modulates the gimbaled engine nozzles by hand, guided by pressure readouts and inclinometer feedback on the HUD screens. Outside, the core engines roar to life in perfect synchronization, flames sculpted by the desert breeze into pillars of incandescent plasma. The launch mount shutters, locked in place by hold-down clamps that release in a predetermined sequence. Instruments record every nuance: the minute tremors in the foundation, the subsonic shockwaves that ripple into the sand. Reeves listens to the crescendo, then signals to the pad control officer, who confirms separation of the clamps. A resounding clang echoes through the night as mechanical jaws swing open, freeing the rocket to ascend. The countdown resumes with renewed intensity: T10, T9, T8, each digit resonating like a drumbeat in the frozen air. Ground cameras follow the plume's first flicker into the sky as the vehicle clears the tower. In the command van, murmurs of relief ripple through the assembled specialists. Heartbeats slow from racing tempo to steady cadence. Telemetry streams shift to ascent mode, plotting velocity, altitude, and angle of attack. Reeves watches the trajectory arc on the central display, confirming that the manually controlled sequence holds true to the projected flight path. As the rocket rises above the desert horizon, its tail flame painting the low clouds in fiery ribbons, the human network behind the mission exhales collectively. The night of trials has passed the critical juncture. Where once technology teetered on the brink of failure, Human judgment and calm decisiveness restored the path forward. Screens flicker from cautionary red to confident green. The command van's overhead lights return to full brightness, and technicians exult silently in shared triumph. Miles above, the booster stages begin their separation choreography, an intricate ballet of interlocking components engineered to detach at precise velocities. Reeves's influence remains palpable in the clean transitions and the steadfast adherence to mission parameters. The dark stretch between Earth and space now hosts a slender gleam of human hope, a testament to solidarity at the moment of greatest peril. In that stark, starlit expanse, the seed of survival takes flight, carrying the weight of every soul who dare to defy the abyss. The rocket's engines ignite in a thunderous roar that reverberates across the desert plain. Plumes of superheated exhaust billowing in incandescent folds beneath a sky brushed with the first light of dawn. As the hold-down clamps release in a synchronized clatter, the vehicle rises on a pillar of fire and smoke, its gleaming fuselage reflecting the glow of booster flames that push it upward against Earth's gravity. The launch pad shudders as the giant craft ascends, trailing a glowing ribbon that threads through cooling air into the boundless expanse above. Ground cameras track every nuance of motion, their lenses capturing the subtle arc of ascent that will place the rocket on its precisely calculated intercept path. In the mobile command van, technicians lean forward, eyes locked on monitors displaying velocity curves, pitch angles, and live telemetry, while a hush of collective focus settles over the room. Above the atmosphere, the first stage separates in a controlled ballet of pyrotechnic charges, sending the spent booster tumbling away in a graceful spiral. The second stage engine ignites almost instantly, its narrower plume cutting through the thinning air with a sharper, more focused thrust. In parallel, orbital observatories and deep space radars shift their beam patterns to lock onto the incoming asteroid, a solitary silhouette drifting across the star-studded void. The great rock appears on screens as a jagged teardrop against the blackness, its surface mottled with craters and fissures revealed in false-color infrared mapping. Data streams quantify its mass and spin, while trajectory overlays mark the precise window during which the deflection maneuver must occur. Time becomes elastic. Every millisecond carries the weight of possibility and peril. Far below, thousands of miles apart, the Chinese ion beam installation and the American gravitational tractor move into synchronized operation. In the remote Xinjiang desert, a field of solar collectors tilts toward the rising sun, channeling energy into high-power microwave generators that feed a colossal laser array. Mirrors polished to molecular smoothness align in unison, focusing beams of coherent light into a parallel column that pierces the stratosphere. Simultaneously, in geosynchronous orbit above the Pacific, the gravity tractor satellite activates its magnetically charged tethers, generating a subtle but continuous pull on the asteroid's dark bulk. Thrusters on the satellite maintain position, counteracting minute perturbations with bursts of xenon propellant. Back in the war room, the screens divide into multi-panel views. The rocket's final burn profile, the laser beam's propagation through the atmosphere, and the gravity tractor's real-time force vector. A narrow band of light materializes on the asteroid's leading edge in the deep space imagery, an incandescent streak as the laser begins to ablate surface material, creating a jet effect plume that exerts a gentle push. At the same moment, the gravity tractor's tether current attains full strength, its electromagnetic influence nudging the asteroid's center of mass ever so slightly. Across the digital overlay of projected paths, the trajectory curve begins to budge, arching away from the projected impact point like a reed bending before the wind. For a heartbeat that stretches into eternity, nothing seems to change. Then, on one console, a simple green LED flickers to life, its small glow richer than any display of red warning lights. An icon beside it updates to read deflection confirmed. The The room erupts into an instantaneous surge of relief, so profound that some team members instinctively clasp each other's shoulders, their shoulders sagging in collective exhalation. Monitors confirm that the asteroid's path will now sweep harmlessly past Earth's orbital zone, missing critical landmasses by thousands of kilometers. The combined might of laser photons and gravitational pull has shifted the course of a celestial body the size of a mountain. Outside, as the first rays of sunlight crest the horizon, the sky still trembles with the echo of yesterday's despair. Now it carries a new resonance, the quiet triumph of human ingenuity and cooperation triumphing over cosmic indifference. News feeds light up in every time zone as data packets and multimedia feeds cascade through secure networks, broadcasting the moment of victory. Headlines scroll across screens worldwide proclaiming that, at the edge of oblivion, humanity stood united and turned away doom with science and solidarity. In the control center, Reeves removes his headset and breathes deeply, his face illuminated by the monitor's soft glow. He leans back against the console, taking in the scene of elated colleagues celebrating against a backdrop of humbling realization that the capacity for hope can become the catalyst for survival. Engineers revise the post-mission checklist to include deflection performance metrics and debris monitoring protocols. Satellite operators calibrate cameras to track the asteroid's new trajectory, ensuring that no fragment poses a lingering threat. At ground sites and orbiting stations alike, crews compile logs detailing every second of the operation, creating a unified archive of triumph over adversity. As the rocket's second stage continues its final burn toward intercept rendezvous and the deep space beams dim to low-power maintenance mode, the world beyond the compound emerges into a new day. Pedestrians pause to read breaking alerts on smartphone screens. Radio broadcasts shift from routine traffic reports to interviews with leading scientists and mission commanders. In city squares and living rooms, strangers share a moment of collective joy, an unspoken bond formed by the knowledge that our planet's fate rested on the shared endeavors of countless individuals across borders and disciplines. In that unfolding dawn, the explosion of hope detonates softly within every heart. It is a reminder that when challenged by forces greater than any one nation or institution, humanity's finest moments arise from collaboration, courage, and the belief that, together, we hold the power to rewrite the narrative of our own destiny. The morning sun cast a gentle glow across the global landscape as people in every time zone awoke to the realization that the world had been spared an unthinkable fate. Streets that had once echoed with the apprehension of impending disaster now hummed with a different energy, a cautious optimism blended with an acute awareness of the fragility of life. In every scientific institute and military command post, teams exchanged triumphant messages and updated protocols, their faces reflecting relief and resolve. Laboratories that had been laser-focused on deflection technologies pivoted toward broader research on planetary defense, mapping the solar system for other potential threats and designing scalable response architectures. Satellites formerly dedicated to reconnaissance shared bandwidth with new sensor arrays tuned to detect near-Earth objects of all sizes. Data centers hummed as they ingested terabytes of new observations, feeding machine learning algorithms that would continuously refine predictive models. Amid this swift transformation, debris analysts and orbital dynamics experts collaborated across continents, comparing models to ensure no fragment drifted into a hazardous corridor. International coalitions that had once argued over trade tariffs now drafted joint statements on space security, formalizing agreements that surpassed any Cold War-era treaties in scope and ambition. A network of shared launch facilities expanded to include sites in South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, ensuring equitable access to the technologies that had proven their worth in the final hours of the crisis. Engineers in wind tunnels tested new heat shield materials, while chemists synthesized propellants with higher energy density and lower environmental impact. Universities repurposed classrooms for remote seminars on astrodynamics and aerospace ethics, inspiring a generation to view the heavens not merely as a frontier of exploration, but as a domain deserving constant stewardship. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, public squares and city plazas hosted lantern lighting ceremonies and peace vigils, commemorating the collective effort that had preserved humanity's future. Musicians composed symphonies in honor of the mission's success, weaving motifs of deflection maneuvers and kinetic impacts into stirring movements. Visual artists created murals depicting the moment of triumph, a slender rocket arching against the night sky, beams of laser light painting a path toward a once ominous asteroid now set adrift in safe orbit. Literary journals published essays reflecting on the moral imperative to transform fear into cooperation, as poets framed the crisis as a crucible that refined the global spirit. Historians drafted accounts that would one day enter textbooks, marking this as a chapter when humanity, united by necessity, transcended political divisions to avert catastrophe. Economic forums convened emergency sessions to analyze the financial ripple effects of the mission. Stock markets, once jittery at every forecast, stabilized as defense innovation stocks soared modestly in recognition of their new social purpose. Funding pipelines reopened for sustainable development programs that had been paused in the shadow of crisis, ensuring that disaster relief and long-term resilience went hand in hand. Insurance firms restructured risk models to factor in planetary defense as a hedge against unprecedented losses, while public-private partnerships flourished to underwrite future space ventures. In remote villages and bustling metropolises alike, conversations turned from uncertainty to ambition, as everyday citizens contemplated careers in STEM fields or advocacy for science funding. At the heart of this awakening, Keanu Reeves re-emerged into public view with a quiet ceremony held at a newly inaugurated Global Resilience Center. The facility combined research laboratories, crisis response training grounds, and community outreach programs under one roof. Reeves, clad in unassuming attire of dark jeans and a simple blazer, walked the halls alongside leading scientists, emergency responders, and youth ambassadors. Cameras captured his understated interactions. A handshake with a roboticist calibrating a satellite component, a nod of encouragement to a volunteer teaching disaster preparedness drills, a shared smile with a high school intern whose questions brimmed with hope. His serene gaze spoke volumes. The crisis had been a test, and compassion must remain the guiding force behind every technological advance. In a statement streamed to billions, Reeves spoke not in grand oratory, but in measured reflections on unity and responsibility. He reminded viewers that the asteroid had revealed both humanity's vulnerabilities and its capacity for self-organization. He called for sustained commitment to collaborative ventures, whether in space or on Earth's surface, urging that the same solidarity that deflected a celestial threat be applied to poverty, climate change, and global health. He emphasized that compassion was not passive but active, requiring resources, vigilance, and the willingness to act before the next warning siren sounded. As twilight settled on the horizon, a new satellite launch tower stood lit against the fading sky, its silhouette a promise of continued vigilance. The structure was named the Dawn Sentinel, a beacon of humanity's resolve to guard the future of every living being. Reeves observed the launch from a discreet distance, his calm expression framed by the watchful eyes of engineers and diplomats. In that quiet moment, the world felt infinitely small, yet brimming with potential. A new chapter had begun, a chapter in which unity and empathy would chart the course of human destiny, shaping a tomorrow born not from fear, but from the radiant hope of a civilization awakened to its shared purpose.